The soot still hung heavy in the air, thick with the acrid smell of a dream gone to ash, when my phone buzzed in my trembling hand. The small fire in my pottery studio, my livelihood, my entire world, had taken firefighters hours to contain. I stood there, covered in grime and despair, staring at the pieces that were now just dust. At the custom-built kiln my grandfather had helped me install, now a twisted metal carcass. And then he called. Liam. Not from the ceramic supplier upstate where I thought he was picking up that rare batch of clay I'd asked for, but from somewhere in Florida, the sound of waves and loud party music bleeding through the phone. "Babe, what's with the gloom and doom?" he slurred, clearly already a few drinks in. "Relax, insurance will cover it, right? Hey, listen, the guys and I are thinking of extending the trip a few more days. How about you wire some extra cash so we can hit that beach festival tonight? It's gonna be legendary." My world had just been torched, a decade of my work threatened, and his main concern was a beach festival. Right there, my heart shattered. Smoke stinging my eyes, it wasn't just a realization dawning on me. It was a wrecking ball. He wasn't my partner. He was just more wreckage I needed to clear from my life. As I hung up, his words echoing like a cruel joke, a nearly 5-year movie reel played in my mind. I remembered the charming Liam I'd met at an art fair, praising my pieces, talking about how art and soul needed to walk together. Little did I know the only soul he truly valued was his own, and the only art he'd mastered was the art of living off me. In the first few months, he'd made a show of looking for gigs, a few creative consulting projects that never saw the light of day. Soon, our apartment sofa became his main office, and my hard-earned money from the studio became the official sponsor of his bar tabs with friends and his soul-searching trips that invariably ended at some concert or a friend's beach house. "You've got talent to spare, honey. You don't need to stress so much," he'd say whenever I mentioned tight budgets or needing to invest in new equipment. It was his subtle way of keeping me on the hook, ensuring the well didn't run dry. I, blinded by an idealized partnership that only existed in my head, paid our rent, utilities, internet, and even gave him an allowance, for which he always had a ready excuse. "The market's tough. I just need more time to develop this brilliant idea." Brilliant was his scheme. There, amidst the ashes of my studio, soot smudging my tears, the anger began to give way to a calculated coldness. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, a kind elderly woman who'd seen more of life than I could imagine, and who always gave me a sympathetic look when Liam went out to find inspiration, appeared with a thermos of coffee and a knowing gaze. "My dear," she said softly, "sometimes a fire is just what you need to show you what truly needs to be burned out of your life for good." And she was right. I picked up my phone again. The first call was to a locksmith. The second to my bank, canceling his supplementary credit card and changing all my passwords. Liam wasn't just going to find a ruined studio when he returned. He was going to find the door to my life firmly shut. And for the first time in a long while, amidst the pain of material loss, I felt a spark of something that felt dangerously like freedom. The days after the fire were a blur of insurance calls, contractor quotes, and the exhausting attempt to salvage what remained of my pieces. Liam, of course, only strolled back 2 days after his legendary festival, tanned and looking utterly unfazed. He found his bags packed nightly by the apartment building's front door, and the locks changed. The scene he made was worthy of a soap opera. First confusion, then feigned outrage. "What the hell, Chloe, after everything we've been through?" And finally, when he realized the theatrics weren't working, pure, unadulterated financial desperation. My phone blew up with a barrage of accusations and pleas. "You can't do this to me. I have nowhere to go." "What about the money for the clay you asked me to buy? I spent it on us, thinking about our future." "I need cash for a motel room at least." Not a single question about how I was coping with the loss of the studio, no offer to help clean up the mess. His only concern was his own comfort and his empty wallet. Curiously, the person who showed up offering a shoulder and a helping hand was Sarah, Liam's younger sister. I'd never been close to her. Liam always painted her as a mooch living off their parents, a female version of himself, in his words. But Sarah arrived at my apartment with a box of donuts and a genuinely concerned expression. "Chloe, I heard about the studio and about Liam. I'm so sorry for everything. My brother is complicated."
She told me Liam had called their parents in a panic, spinning a tale about how I'd kicked him out in a jealous rage and desperately needed money. "They bought it, like always," Sarah sighed. "But I know his games. He's been using you for years, hasn't he?" I just nodded, still dazed from lack of sleep and too much reality. I never approved of his ways, but he always made me out to be the villain in the family, the jealous one, she confessed. Maybe, just maybe, amidst all this tragedy, an unexpected ally was emerging. With Mrs. Peterson's support and, surprisingly, Sarah's, I began to pick up the pieces. Literally. I rented a tiny workspace in Mrs. Peterson's converted garage to set up a temporary studio. Sarah, who had an incredible knack for organization and social media, started helping me catalog the salvaged pieces and promote my work online to raise funds for the rebuild. I blocked Liam from my phone and all social media, but the peace was short-lived. One gray afternoon, as I was trying to shape a vase with hands still sore, I heard insistent knocking on Mrs. Peterson's front door. It was him. Unshaven, clothes rumpled, with the kicked puppy look that, for a split second, almost made me waver. Almost. "Chloe, we really need to talk," he began, his voice syrupy sweet, the tone that used to melt me now just made my skin crawl. "I know I messed up. I was an idiot about the Florida thing, but to just cut me off like this with no money, that's not cool." I opened the door just a crack, enough for him to see I wasn't giving an inch. "What do you want, Liam?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Look," he gestured impatiently, "that music festival we were supposed to go to next month, I had already bought the VIP tickets with your credit card, remember? They were super expensive. And the boutique hotel I booked, it's non-refundable. You're not going to leave me stuck with that bill, are you? It's the least you can do after kicking me out on the street with no warning." His audacity was breathtaking. My studio was in ashes, my professional future a giant question mark, and his concern was a music festival and a hotel. Not a word about my studio insurance, about my sleepless nights, just the money. "Liam," I said, a chilling calm settled over me, "the tickets and the hotel are your problem, just like all your other expenses from now on. I told you, the sponsorship is over." He tried to argue, to raise his voice, to appeal to our time together, time during which I supported you and your luxuries while you called me a workaholic neurotic. My studio, my livelihood was almost destroyed. I could have lost everything. And you were worried about a beach party? That says it all, don't you think? He was speechless, the victim mask beginning to crumble. Quite the turnaround, isn't it? If you're enjoying Chloe's journey and want to see where the story goes, take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel right here so you don't miss a single detail. It's just one click. I closed the door on Liam, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and a strange new power. But he wasn't the type to give up easily, especially when money was involved. The next day, I discovered his new tactic. He'd called an emergency meeting with our mutual friends at the local pub we used to frequent. Sarah called me, exasperated. "Chloe, you won't believe this. Liam is here putting on a massive sob story, saying you're completely unhinged from the stress of the fire, that you broke up with him over a misunderstanding, and now you're refusing to return the emotional and financial investment he made in your career." He was trying to paint me as the crazy, ungrateful one. He even concocted a story that part of the money I used for the studio came from a generous allowance he secretly received from his parents to help us out. A blatant lie to justify why he never worked. What Liam hadn't anticipated was that lately, with his increasingly frequent absences and my ever-deepening dark circles, some of these friends were already starting to connect the dots. Furthermore, Sarah, fed up with her brother's manipulations, decided to spill the beans. She interrupted Liam's victim monologue and told everyone, right there in the pub, about his call from Florida on the day of the fire, about his refusal to come back and help, about the years he'd lived off me. "Investment? What investment, Liam?" she asked, her voice firm. "The only investment here was Chloe's in you, funding your whims while she worked herself to the bone." Some friends were shocked. Others exchanged awkward glances, remembering the countless times Liam had boasted about rounds of drinks and appetizers on the house, which was actually my tab. The gossip spread like wildfire through our small circle and among the local artists. Suddenly, it wasn't crazy Chloe anymore. It was Liam, the freeloading bum. I received messages of support from people I barely knew, local artists offering to help clear out the old studio, donating materials, commissioning pieces to help me get back on my feet. Mrs. Peterson, with her folksy wisdom, just smiled and said, "The truth has a way of coming out, dear, and those who sow the wind reap the whirlwind." And Liam's whirlwind was just beginning. Liam's reputation crumbled faster than an under-fired clay pot. Without my money to pay the rent on the bachelor pad he'd moved into after I kicked him out, and with his parents finally tired of his flimsy excuses, thanks to Sarah's persistence in showing them the truth, he found himself in a real bind. The friends who once adored his company when the drinks were flowing vanished like smoke. I found out through Sarah that he tried to peddle some of those creative consulting gigs that never materialized, and even attempted a DJ career at neighborhood block parties. But his musical talent was as questionable as his work ethic. He ended up moving back into his parents' house, into a small room in the basement, having to endure daily lectures and a complete lack of privacy. The misunderstood artist was now sharing a bathroom with his teenage nephew. Meanwhile, my life, despite the trauma of the fire, began to take an unexpected and positive turn. The small, improvised workshop in Mrs. Peterson's garage became a hub for other local artisans. The online campaign Sarah organized went viral among pottery enthusiasts. I managed to secure a small business loan with a solid plan, boosted by the outpouring of support I'd received. The insurance, though slow, finally started to release part of the claim for the studio. More important than the money, however, was the network of solidarity that formed. I received commissions from galleries in other cities, invitations to major craft fairs. My pieces, once seen merely as Chloe's hobby that supports her boyfriend, gained new meaning, a story of resilience. Liam, every now and then, would show up unexpectedly on my street, usually around the time a client payment was due, with some sob story about getting back on his feet and needing a small boost. The last time, he came with a printed spreadsheet detailing debts we incurred together, which obviously were his credit card debts from bars and designer stores. "Chloe, it's $7,000 to clear my name and start over. Think of it as an investment in our old partnership." I just looked at him, at the man I once loved, who now seemed like a pathetic stranger. "Liam, my only current partnership is with my work and with the people who truly believe in me.
You are no longer part of that equation." He left muttering that I was cold and calculating. Maybe, but I'd rather be cold and in charge of my own destiny than warm and supporting a parasite. Chloe's story is reaching a pivotal moment. If you believe she deserves this comeback, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel to follow the conclusion of this and many other stories of female strength. 6 months after the fire, my new studio, smaller but incredibly charming, was open for business. Not in the same location, but in a neighborhood buzzing with creative energy. The opening was a celebration with friends, clients, and the artisans who had supported me so much. Sarah, now my informal business partner, handled the online marketing and sales with a competence that amazed me. Liam, according to the scant news that trickled through Sarah, was still at his parents' house, drifting between short-lived odd jobs and long periods of lamenting how the system was unfair to visionary artists like him. He'd put on some weight, lost the sparkle in his eyes, and apparently gained a collection of excuses for every failure. One day, between firing a batch of pieces and organizing a workshop, I received an email. The sender, Liam. I hesitated before opening it. I expected another plea for money, another manipulative attempt. But the content was different. It wasn't a request, but a kind of rambling, confused outpouring, almost a confession. "Chloe," it began, "I know I was a jerk. Seeing you out there rebuilding everything, shining, while I'm here picking up the pieces of a life I destroyed myself, it's tough. I was dead weight, I know. I was jealous of your strength, your talent, and instead of supporting you, I pulled you down to make myself feel less useless." He wrote about doing some manual labor for an uncle at a small construction company, something he'd always despised, and how the sweat and aching muscles were making him see things differently. "I don't expect you to forgive me or for us to ever be friends again. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. Too late, I know."
Sarah later told me Liam had a major anxiety attack a few weeks earlier, ended up in the ER thinking he was having a heart attack. The doctor said it was pure stress, the result of a reckless lifestyle and the pressure of, for the first time, having to face real responsibilities. That, apparently, had shaken him somehow. I didn't feel pity, but I also didn't feel the vengeful satisfaction I might have imagined months ago. It was more of a melancholy relief, confirmation that I had made the right choice, and that he, finally, was beginning to reap what he'd sown. Almost a year after that fateful day of the fire, I was at a major national design fair, my ceramics showcased in a booth that radiated my identity. Sarah was by my side, buzzing with excitement at every sale, every compliment. That's when I saw him, standing at a distance, watching. Liam. Thinner than the last time I'd seen him, his clothes simple but clean, an air about him of someone who'd been knocked around by life but was, somehow, still standing. He didn't approach immediately, just stood there, as if hesitating. I took a deep breath. That tightness in my chest, the old anger, it had all dissipated, replaced by a serenity that surprised me. When the crowd at my booth thinned, he walked over, hands in his pockets, a sheepish grin on his face. "Your pieces look amazing, Chloe. I always knew you'd go far." The line, which once would have sounded like cheap flattery, now seemed to hold a shred of sincerity, maybe even regret. "Thanks, Liam," I replied, without hostility, but also without the warmth of before. We talked for a few minutes, something I never imagined would be possible. He told me he was still working with his uncle, learning the construction trade, and that in his spare time he was trying to learn guitar, for real this time.
He mentioned he was attending a support group for people who have trouble taking charge of their own lives. His words. He didn't ask for money, didn't try to play the victim. He just talked, like an equal, or at least trying to. Before he left, he paused and said, his voice a little shaky, "I know I don't deserve it, but do you think someday we could, I don't know, grab a coffee? No strings attached. Just do it, catch up, like two people who once knew each other." I looked at him, the man who had caused me so much pain, but who also, indirectly, had propelled me into the greatest transformation of my life. The revenge, for me, was never about destroying him, but about rebuilding myself, about proving to myself that I was capable. And I was. "Liam," I said with a slight smile, "maybe someday. But this time, you're buying, and it won't be with my money." He chuckled, a genuine laugh without the old arrogance. He nodded and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I watched him go, not with hatred nor with love, but with the quiet certainty of a woman who had closed a painful chapter and who was now, finally, the sole artisan of her own happiness. And the future? The future was a blank canvas, ready for my most vibrant colors. And that was Chloe's story, a journey from ashes to rediscovering her own worth. Amazing how life can surprise us, isn't it? Now, I'd love to know, from what city or corner of the world are you watching our story today? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to see how far Chloe's strength has reached. And of course, if you were moved and inspired, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more empowering stories like this, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know what's new. Take care and see you next time.